Somewhere by the sea, a young storyteller named Alara faced an impossible choice. Her grandmother, the woman who taught her every song she knew, was slowly fading, her dreams haunted by shadows no earthly melody could dispel. Alara possessed a voice that could soothe storms, but it was powerless against the darkness, claiming her grandmother's spirit. Her only hope lay in a myth, the fabled sunken city of Ethel, whispered to hold the purest lullaby ever sung. To fail her quest meant her grandmother would be lost forever to nightmares. I wonder, for those of you listening, where in the world you are and what the hour feels like there. This is the story of a journey where ancient magic and personal devotion collide, a tale of what one person will risk for love. What is the one memory you would risk everything to protect? Silver Barkwood is known for its strength and its quiet song, a low hum that resonates when carved by loving hands. Alara worked through the night, her hands shaping the vessel not as a mere boat, but as a promise. With each strip of pliable bark, she wove in the protective charms her grandmother had sung to her since childhood, tiny knots of intent meant to guard against unseen currents. When dawn broke, the small craft was ready, resting on the sand like a sliver of the moon itself. Looking back at the hut where her grandmother slept, a fragile peace on her face, the weight of leaving settled deep in Alara's chest. It felt less like a departure and more like an abandonment. The village elders came to the water's edge, their faces etched with concern. They did not speak of storms or monsters, but of the sea's nature. They warned her the ocean is a living mind, they said, vast and ancient, and it has a tendency to forget. It swallows not just ships, but the memories of those who sail too far, leaving them adrift in a haze of yesterday. Alara heard their words, but her heart was anchored to the myth of Ethel. She placed her faith in the old tales, a desperate choice made from a deeper love than fear. The moment her boat slid into the water, the world changed. A thick, pearlescent fog descended with unnatural speed, wrapping around her until the shoreline, the hut, and her entire past vanished into a featureless white. She was utterly alone, the familiar sound of waves now muffled and strange. Just as a cold dread began to whisper at the edges of her resolve, a soft, melodic humming drifted through the mist. It had no discernible source, yet it felt like an answer, a thread of sound in the overwhelming silence, pulling her forward into the unknown. The humming wove through the fog, a single thread of sound in an endless white tapestry. With no sun or stars to guide her, Alara had no choice but to trust it, steering her silver bark boat toward the melody that seemed to pulse from the very air. It was a terrifying act of faith, her hands tight on the rudder as every instinct screamed to retreat to a shore that no longer existed. The desire to turn back was a physical ache, a pull toward the familiar safety of a world she could see and touch. But the memory of her grandmother's troubled sleep was a stronger anchor, and so she pressed forward into the disorienting silence. Summoning her courage, she did the only thing that felt natural. She opened her mouth and began to sing, not a commanding melody, but a soft, tentative harmony to the guiding hum. It was an offering, a way to prove she was not just a lost traveler, but a willing participant in this ancient magic. The response was immediate and breathtaking. The dark water ahead began to shimmer with a soft, blue-green light as countless bioluminescent plankton ignited. painting a radiant path across the sea's surface. Her heart soared at the confirmation, a silent cheer in the vast emptiness. Yet that same light also illuminated something else, a vast, dark shape, gliding silently just beneath her boat. The water around her boat suddenly grew still, too still. The water beside her boat parted as a great shape rose from the depths. It was a whale, its back a living map of barnacles and coral, its eyes like ancient moons holding a soft, knowing light. It did not threaten, but simply was, a massive, gentle guardian, now completely blocking her path. A series of low, resonant clicks emanated from the creature, a sound that vibrated through the hull of her boat, and then formed itself, impossibly, into clear words within her own mind. For whom do you seek the city? It was not a demand, but a profound question, a test of her very reason for being there in this forgotten place. Alara knew instinctively that a lie, or even a half-truth, spoken from a place of selfish desire, would mean the end of her journey. The magic here could not be tricked. Her quest was not for treasure or forgotten power, but to mend a broken dream, to lift a shadow from a single, cherished soul. She opened her mouth, but no spoken words felt adequate. Instead, she drew a steadying breath and sang. It was just a fragment, the opening notes of the lullaby her grandmother had sung to her every night of her childhood, a melody so woven with love and safety that to sing it now, in this vast and lonely sea, made her heart ache. She poured every ounce of her love, her fear, and her unwavering hope into those few, simple notes. The great whale held her in its moonlit gaze for a long, suspended moment. Then, with a slow, deliberate blink, it submerged without a splash, sliding back into the dark water as silently as it had arrived. As it vanished, the oppressive fog simply dissolved, pulled apart like old cobwebs. The open sea stretched before her under a sky now dotted with familiar stars. Yet the relief was short-lived. The ocean around her was no longer silent. It was alive with a new sound, a constant, sibilant whisper that seemed to come from the water itself, from the way it slid against her boat and curled around the unseen currents below. The path was clear, but the sea itself was now listening, and the way forward led directly into a shifting, treacherous expanse of whispering currents. With the path clear, she sailed into the realm of the whispering currents. The whispers rose from the water like steam, curling around the boat with voices that were almost her own. They did not speak of monsters or storms, but of peace. A current brushed against the hull, murmuring a fragment of a birthday song her grandmother had sung long ago. Another swirled past, painting a perfect image on the surface of the water, a vision of the old woman standing on the shore, healthy and smiling, beckoning her home. The promise was a physical weight, pulling at her heart. Every instinct yearned to believe it, to turn the boat and sail back to that beautiful lie. Her hands trembled on the rudder, the line between her true mission and this seductive illusion blurring. The whispers grew more personal, more insistent, offering her the one thing she wanted most, a world where her quest was already over and her grandmother was saved. It was a battle fought not with strength, but with will. She squeezed her eyes shut, blocking out the false shore and the loving face in the water. She forced herself to remember the real face, the one etched with pain, the one haunted by shadows in the quiet of their hut. That memory, sharp and true, became her anchor. She held on to it, repeating her grandmother's true name like a mantra against the chorus of beautiful lies. As her resolve solidified, the whispering currents softened their sibilant pleas. The tempting visions dissolved back into simple sea foam. The water around her grew calm, almost respectful, and with a final, gentle push, it guided her silver bark boat to the edge of an immense and silent expanse. Before her lay a forest of kelp, its towering stalks so dense they formed a tangled wall, and the water within was preternaturally still. The silence of the kelp forest was more unnerving than the whispers. The kelp forest rose before her like a wall of living emerald, its towering fronds so dense they seemed to swallow the very air. Alara guided her silver bark boat into the labyrinth, and the moment she crossed its threshold, the world went mute. It was not a peaceful quiet, but a heavy, absorbing silence that pressed in on her eardrums, a void where even the lap of water against the hull was smothered. This oppressive stillness began to work its way inside her, a subtle drain on her spirit. The urge to hum a comforting tune, to whisper her grandmother's name, simply faded before it could form. A cold dread tightened in her chest as she realized the forest's true danger. It wasn't trying to harm her, it was trying to erase her, to make her as silent and forgotten as the city she sought. Her voice was her compass and her tool, the very essence of her quest, and here in this soundless realm, it felt like a dying ember. Despair whispered that she would forget her own song, and with it, the memory of why she had ever come here at all. She clenched her fists, fighting the numb acceptance that threatened to claim her. Then, with a force of will that felt like lifting a great weight, she parted her lips. No grand melody came out, only a single, shaky note, a hum that was barely more than a vibration in her throat. It was a tiny flame in an immense darkness, a defiant act to remind herself that she, Alara, still existed and still had a purpose. The effect was immediate. The kelp directly ahead of her rustled, though there was no wind, and the dense stalks slowly, gracefully parted to form a narrow channel. A surge of hope cut through the silence, but it was short-lived. Her small sound had stirred the guardians of this place. From the deep shadows between the kelp stalks, luminous shapes began to drift into view. They were jellyfish, their gelatinous bodies pulsing with a soft, hypnotic light as they surrounded her boat in a silent, mesmerizing ballet. The water around her boat bloomed with silent, pulsing light as the jellyfish drew closer, their translucent bodies weaving an intricate dance. They did not advance with menace, but with a solemn, deliberate grace, their bioluminescent forms tracing symbols and scenes across the dark water. A spiral of light might form, then stretch into a long, sorrowful line, like a thread being pulled away. Another would pulse in a steady, fading rhythm, like a heartbeat growing quiet. It was a story told without words, a narrative of letting go, of a love so profound it chose silence over sorrow. Alara felt the meaning seep into her bones. This was not a barrier to be broken, but a lesson to be understood. To fail was to accept its quiet conclusion, to be wrapped in their gentle, dreamless embrace forever. Her voice was useless here, in this temple of silence, but her hands remembered the love she carried. She reached into her boat and retrieved a small, polished shell her grandmother had given her, a token from a happier time. Holding it up, she caught the jellyfish's light upon its pearly surface. With slow, deliberate movements, She began to reflect that stolen light back, weaving it into new patterns. She traced the shape of her grandmother's smile, the curve of her hand brushing hair from a fevered brow. She painted a scene of shared bread on a cold morning, of a patient old woman teaching a clumsy child a forgotten song. Her story, reflected in their own silent language, was not one of grand sacrifice, but of countless small kindnesses, a lifetime of selfless love given freely. The luminous sentinels slowed their dance, gathering to watch her shell weave its tale. They pulsed in unison, a soft, warm glow that felt like a sigh of recognition. Then, as one, they drifted backward, their light fading gently into the deep green until only darkness remained. The path was clear, but the victory felt hollow. The silence of the kelp forest was gone, replaced by a low, resonant hum that seemed to rise from the very core of the world. Before her lay the Abyssal Trench, the gateway to the city. The low hum became a physical presence as Alara guided her boat to the very edge. Below her lay an absolute blackness, a void that seemed to swallow sound and light and hope itself. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she pushed the rudder, and the silver bark vessel tipped forward into the abyss. The descent was a slow, controlled fall into a realm of immense pressure. The air grew heavy, and a deep cold began to seep into the wood, into her bones. In response, the protective charms she had woven into the boat's hull began to glow with a faint, silver light, a fragile shield against the overwhelming dark. It was a fight not against a monster, but against the sheer, crushing weight of the deep. The walls of the trench felt as if they were closing in, the darkness a tangible force pressing against her chest, threatening to extinguish her tiny sphere of light and the air in her lungs. Her courage, which had carried her through fog and whispers and silence, now felt like a thin, frayed thread. To turn back was impossible. To go forward felt like a surrender to the abyss. So she did the only thing she had left. She opened her mouth and sang, not a song of defiance, but of acceptance. She began a low, descending scale, matching her pitch and her breath to the increasing pressure, note by note. It was an attempt not to conquer the ocean, but to become a part of it, to harmonize with the ancient, crushing song of the deep. Her voice, woven with intent and love, resonated in the strange water. And the trench answered. Ancient crystals, dormant for millennia and embedded in the rock walls, ignited one by one at the touch of her melody. They bloomed with a soft, ethereal blue light, creating a cascading path of illumination down into the heart of the darkness. The sight stole her breath. It was both breathtakingly beautiful and utterly terrifying. The light revealed the true, impossible scale of her descent, a sheer drop into the planet's depths that seemed to have no end. Yet, far below, where the crystal path finally converged, the light revealed something else, the magnificent, pearlescent gates of Ethel, waiting at the end of it all. The pearlescent gates of Ethel rose before her, seamless and immense, reflecting the crystal light in shifting, opalescent hues. There was no handle, no lock, no seam to suggest an opening, only a vast, silent surface that seemed to absorb the very air around it. Alara knew instinctively that no physical force in the world could breach this barrier. The gates were a lock, and the key was not an object, but a sound. She tried the first melody that came to her, the oldest song from the village tales, a tune of creation meant for the dawn of the world. She sang it clearly, her voice echoing in the cavernous space, but the gates remained utterly inert, not even a ripple disturbing their perfect surface. A cold dread began to tighten her throat. She tried another, a hymn to the sea from a forgotten dialect, pouring all her technical skill into the complex notes. Again, nothing. The silence that answered her was more crushing than the abyssal pressure. She was at the very threshold of her salvation, holding the wrong keys to a door that would not budge. Despair whispered that all the tales were wrong, that the city was a myth after all, and her journey had been for nothing. In that moment of utter defeat, her mind drifted back through the years, past the practiced village songs, to the quietest hours in the hut. She remembered her grandmother in the deep of night, caught in the throes of a restless dream, humming a few broken, wandering notes. It was a melody that went nowhere, a private, sorrowful tune that Alara had never heard anyone else sing. It was not a song meant for the world, but a sound from the soul. With nothing left to lose, she closed her eyes, let the memory fill her, and began to hum that same fractured lullaby. She did not sing it with skill, but with raw feeling, offering up the most intimate sound she possessed. The response was immediate and profound. A deep, resonant hum answered from within the gates themselves, a vibration she felt in her teeth and bones. Without a sound, the colossal structures began to part, sliding inward with impossible grace. Yet the act of opening them cost her. A wave of exhaustion washed over her, as if the gates had drawn the energy for their movement directly from her spirit. She felt incredibly small, standing at the entrance to a power that had slept for ages, a force that was now stirring because of her song. Beyond the gates, the silent, dreaming city awaited. The pearlescent gates sealed behind her with a whisper of finality, and Alara found herself sailing into a city of impossible stillness. Her boat glided over streets of polished coral, smooth as glass and gleaming with a soft inner light. Towers of iridescent mother of pearl spiraled upward, their surfaces shifting with colors that had no name in the world above. Yet the magnificent silence was absolute. This was not the quiet of an empty place, but the deep, held breath of a world in stasis. Every bench, every courtyard, was populated by the city's people, each one transformed into a statue of smooth, pale stone. They were captured in moments of peaceful life, a child reaching for a floating bubble, two friends sharing a conversation, an elder gazing at the water, their faces all holding the same serene, dreaming expression. An overwhelming sadness washed over Alara, the profound weight of a story forever paused. Her instinct was to tiptoe, to make no sound that might shatter their eternal rest. Her quest felt suddenly intrusive, a loud demand in a temple of quiet dreams. She had to find the lullaby, but to rush through these dreaming streets felt like a desecration. So she stepped from her boat onto the coral road, her feet making no sound. She moved among them not as a trespasser, but as a visitor in a sacred gallery. In a whisper softer than the touch of a sea feather, she began to speak to them, offering words of apology and respect. "I am sorry to walk in your dreams," she murmured to a stone woman tending a frozen garden of crystal seaweed. "I am only here to learn," she whispered to a fisherman, forever casting a net into the still air. Her reverence was a language the city understood. With each whispered apology, a soft glow emerged at her feet. Delicate sea flowers, their petals like spun moonlight, bloomed from the coral, creating a winding, luminous path through the dreaming avenues. The air itself grew heavy, not with pressure, but with the collective weight of countless slumbering minds. It was a tangible fog of memory and emotion, each silent dreamer adding their thread to the tapestry. To breathe was to inhale the echoes of their lives. The glowing path beckoned her forward, a gentle but insistent guide, until it opened into a vast, circular plaza at the very center of everything. The central plaza opened into a vast, silent amphitheater, and at its heart rested the source of everything. It was a starfish of impossible scale, woven from a single piece of living crystal, its 5 points radiating outward like the arms of a sleeping giant. Deep within its core, a faint, slow light pulsed, the only sign that this was not merely a monument, but a slumbering heart. Alara approached with a reverence that stilled her own breath. This was the heart of Ethel, the wellspring of the legendary lullaby. She understood instantly that she could not command it, could not demand its power as a prize. To force a song from this dreaming core would be a violence, a shout in a hall of whispers that could shatter the delicate peace, holding the entire city together. Her quest could not end with destruction, so she did not ask for a gift. She offered one. Placing her hands gently upon the cool, smooth crystal, she closed her eyes and began to sing. It was not the practiced melody of a village tale, but the true, unvarnished story of her journey. She sang of the silver bark boat and the warning of the elders. She hummed the melody of the guiding whale and the siren song of the whispering currents. Her voice trembled as she recounted the oppressive silence of the kelp forest and the crushing weight of the abyss, weaving each trial into a tapestry of sound, all leading back to the single, unwavering love for her grandmother that had brought her here. As she sang, the crystal beneath her palms began to warm. The faint pulse within it quickened, its light growing from a dim echo to a soft, golden radiance that spread through the plaza, touching the stone faces of the dreamers with a gentle warmth. The heart was listening, and it was waking, but with its awakening came a vision, flooding her mind not as an image, but as a profound knowing. She saw the city not as it was, in its silent stasis, but as it could be. The pearlescent towers hummed with life, the coral streets echoed with the laughter of children, and the stone figures stirred, their long dream ending as their eyes opened to a vibrant, waking world. The lullaby was not a thing to be taken. It was the key to this transformation. To learn it, to carry its melody back to the world above, would be to turn that key. It would mean the end of Ethel's eternal dream, the closing of its long, peaceful chapter. The city would live again, but the beautiful, sorrowful sleep that had preserved it for ages would be over forever. The vision presented a terrible, beautiful choice. The choice settled upon Alara with the weight of the entire ocean. To sing the lullaby was to blow out a candle that had burned for 1,000 years, ending a beautiful dream for an entire civilization, just to mend a single, cherished soul. Her love for her grandmother was a fierce, personal flame, but this responsibility was a cold, encompassing tide. How could one measure a single heart against the gentle slumber of thousands? The silence in the plaza was deafening, filled with the unspoken lives of the stone dreamers surrounding her. To wake them felt like a theft, a violent act of love. Her voice, when it finally came, was a fragile whisper against the crystal heart. Is there no other way? She asked the question not as a demand, but as a plea. Must one world end for another to be healed? The crystal heart seemed to soften its glow, its light warming not with power, but with what felt like a deep and ancient approval. Her selfless hesitation had been the final key. A new understanding flowed into her, not as a vision, but as a quiet certainty. The lullaby did not need to be stolen. It could be borrowed, like a precious book from a timeless library, but such a loan required a promise, a piece of collateral to ensure its return. The city, built on the foundation of memory, would accept nothing less than a memory of her own, a single, shining moment of perfect happiness, given freely to its care. To borrow the song, she would have to give a piece of her own, passed away forever. She would give the memory. The decision was instant, a clear note in the symphony of her doubt. She would offer the heart of Ethel, the single most vivid treasure of her life, the day her grandmother taught her to sing. It was a morning of golden light and patient hands, a moment of pure, joyful connection that had shaped her entire world. She placed her hands back upon the crystal and closed her eyes, summoning the memory with all her heart. She felt it lift from the core of her being, a shimmering thread of golden light flowing from her fingertips into the starfish. The crystal heart blazed with a warm, accepting radiance, and then she felt the loss. It was a sharp, cold pang, like a door closing softly in a distant part of her soul. The memory was still there, but it was now a muted echo, a story told about someone else. The colors were faded, the warmth was gone, and the song itself was just a sequence of notes without the feeling that had given it life. She had given away the very source of her own voice. Yet, as she stood there feeling the new emptiness inside, she felt no regret. This was no longer a desperate gamble. It was a conscious exchange, a guardian paying a price for a power greater than herself. In return, the lullaby flowed into her. It was not a melody she heard, but one she became. A song of such profound peace filled her mind that the very water around her began to shimmer, charged with a gentle, resonant energy. But the transaction had consequences. A soft, collective sigh seemed to ripple through the plaza. One of the stone dreamers, a woman nearby, very slowly turned her head. The city was beginning to stir. With the lullaby now woven into her spirit, Alara turned to leave, feeling the ancient streets shift and awaken around her. The water itself seemed to breathe a little deeper as Alara rowed back through the dreaming city. With each pull of the oar, a soft, golden light bloomed within the chests of the stone citizens, as if tiny suns were kindling to life after a long night. A faint, collective sigh echoed through the streets, a sound of 1,000 souls stretching after an age of quiet slumber. It was not a violent rupture, but a gentle, inevitable rousing, and she knew with a pang of guilt that she was its catalyst. Had her act of love, for all its selflessness, been a form of vandalism against this eternal peace, she could not simply flee the consequence of her choice. So as she guided her silver bark boat toward the distant gates, she began to sing the new lullaby, not as a theft, but as a gift. She offered the melody back to the city, a bridge of sound to carry its people gently from dream to waking life. The song wove through the water, a balm of pure tranquility that settled over the glowing statues, smoothing the confusion from their slowly forming expressions. Yet this very act of kindness, this musical offering, could not go unnoticed. From the highest pearlescent towers and the deepest coral grottos, the city's guardians began to rise. They were forms of liquid light and shifting current, their attention turning with a quiet, immense gravity toward the small boat and the singular voice guiding it away from the heart of their awakening world. The guardians of liquid light did not bar her path. They gathered around her small boat in a silent, shimmering congregation, their forms pulsing with a gentle, approving radiance. They had felt the purity of her intent, the willing sacrifice of a cherished memory, and they recognized a keeper of the old ways. Instead of hindering her, they blessed her passage, weaving their light into the very fabric of her silver bark vessel. A profound calm settled over the sea, the waters smoothing into a glassy path that pointed unmistakably toward the world above. Yet this unearned grace felt like a weight upon Alara's shoulders. How could she, who had taken something from this sacred place, even through a fair exchange, be worthy of such a gift? Her heart, still aching from the hollow space where a golden memory had been, swelled with a humility so deep it brought quiet tears to her eyes. She bowed her head low, not in fear, but in profound gratitude, accepting their mercy as the gift it was. The moment her gesture of thanks was complete, the water around her boat surged. The guardian's blessing became a physical force, a current of pure light that seized the small craft and propelled it forward with impossible speed. It was a breathtaking ascent, a rush through the dark water that left the abyssal trench far below. As she was carried upward, she cast one final glance back. The magnificent pearlescent gates of Ethel were sliding shut, their soft glow diminishing as the city, now fully awake, returned to its own story, sealing itself away from the world for the final time. Carried by the blessing, she surged upwards through the dark water. The crushing weight of the deep fell away as her boat soared upward. The radiant crystals of the trench dwindled into pinpricks of blue starlight far below, and the immense blackness softened into the familiar, welcoming blue of the open sea. Yet with every beat of her heart, a new fear took root. Alara clutched the lullaby within her mind, a perfect, shimmering sphere of sound. What if, in the rush of returning to the world of air and wind, the melody simply faded, its magic dissolving like a forgotten dream? What if, after all this, it was not enough to lift the shadows from her grandmother's spirit? The stakes felt higher now than when she faced the abyss, for the only thing left to conquer was doubt itself. So she did not simply remember the song, she became its vessel. She wove the melody into her very breath, humming it with each inhalation and exhalation, stitching the notes into the rhythm of her pulse, until the lullaby was no longer a thing she carried, but a part of what she was. Her journey back was a mirror of her descent, but transformed. The kelp forest was no longer a soundless prison, but a swaying, respectful audience, its fronds parting easily before her blessed boat. The whispering currents offered no lies, only a gentle, supportive push toward home. The absence of physical danger only sharpened the emotional precipice she now faced. And then she saw it, far above, the surface sunlight filtering down through the water in great, shimmering columns, a golden promise of the world she had fought so hard to return to. The surface of the sea shattered around her boat like a pane of glass, and Alara gasped as the bright, open air filled her lungs. The sun was a warm, forgotten blessing on her skin, chasing away the deep's lingering chill. The enchanted fog that had once stolen her world was gone, and there, in the clear distance, lay the familiar curve of her home's shoreline, A profound relief washed over her, so powerful it made her knees weak. Yet that feeling was immediately shadowed by the hollow ache within her, the quiet space where the memory of her first song had lived. She could recall the facts of that golden morning, but the warmth, the joy, the very reason it mattered, was gone, given as payment for the power she now carried. She fixed her eyes on the distant beach, her hands gripping the oars with a renewed and determined strength. The sea itself was placid, a mirror of perfect calm, offering no resistance. This made the final stretch of her journey a quiet, internal war, each pull of the oar a battle between the profound loss she had accepted and the desperate hope that fueled her. The journey across the calm sea was swift, the water itself seeming to aid her return, and soon the simple huts and smoking chimneys of her village came into clear view. The hull of her silver bark boat scraped gently against the familiar sand of her own shore. Alara stumbled onto the beach, her legs trembling from the disorienting shift from sea to solid ground, and found herself surrounded by the hushed, worried faces of her village. They had kept a vigil, and they saw in an instant that the young woman who had left was not the one who had returned. Her eyes held the deep, quiet light of the abyssal crystals, and a sorrow that spoke of a price paid. There was no time for explanations, no moment to share the wonders she had witnessed. The only reality that mattered was the fragile one waiting in the small hut just beyond the dunes. Pushing past the comforting hands and murmured questions, she walked with a single-minded purpose toward home, the weight of the lullaby and the memory she had given for it, a heavy cloak upon her shoulders. She entered the quiet hut where her grandmother lay sleeping. The air was thick and still, carrying the faint, sour scent of illness that no amount of herbs could fully dispel. The old woman's face was pale, her brow furrowed even in rest, as if chasing some dark thought through a troubled dream. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and hope. This was the moment. All the trials, the sacrifices, the impossible choices, narrowed to this single, still point. She knelt beside the bed, her own weariness forgotten, and reached for her grandmother's hand. It felt so thin, so cold. Taking a slow, steadying breath, she closed her eyes, reaching for the perfect, shimmering sphere of sound she had carried from the heart of the world. And she began to sing. Her grandmother's hand felt like a delicate bird in her own, cool and frighteningly light. Alara watched the subtle flicker of distress beneath the old woman's eyelids, the faint shadows that were not cast by the room's gentle light, but by the nightmares within. The air in the small hut grew thick with a profound silence, a held breath of the entire world, waiting to see if a myth could truly mend a broken reality. A final chilling doubt seized her. What if the lullaby, born from the collective dream of an entire civilization, was simply too vast, too alien, to soothe the singular, human sorrow of one beloved soul? She could not afford to entertain the fear. Closing her eyes, she let the world fall away, and from the deepest part of her being, she began to sing. The melody that flowed from her was not loud, but it was immense. It filled the quiet space not as a sound, but as a presence. Soft, swirling motes of light, like dust from a fallen star, shimmered into being with each note, drifting through the still air to settle gently over her grandmother's sleeping form. They landed on her brow, her hands, her chest, each tiny point of light absorbing into her like a drop of water into parched earth. As the song wove its tranquil magic, the haunting shadows etched into the lines of her grandmother's face began to soften and recede, as if dawn were slowly breaking behind her closed eyes. The lullaby demanded everything. Alara felt it drawing not just upon her breath, but upon the very essence of her spirit, a current of magic flowing from her into the still form on the bed. Her voice became a vessel, channeling a peace so profound it left her own heart feeling scraped raw and hollow. With each note, the ache of her sacrificed memory throbbed like a phantom limb, a sharp reminder of the golden morning she had traded for this single chance. The cost felt staggering in that moment, an emptiness so vast it threatened to swallow her. But then she saw it, a subtle shift beneath her grandmother's eyelids. The frantic dance of bad dreams was slowing, calming. Alara made a choice, a final act of will. She let the thought of the price fall away and poured every last shred of her focus, her love, her remaining strength into the song. She gave it all, holding nothing back. The melody swelled to its natural conclusion, a cascade of tranquil sound that washed through the small room, and as the final note hung in the air, her grandmother's breathing deepened into a slow, steady rhythm she had not known in years. The deep lines of worry and pain that had been etched into her face for so long simply melted away, smoothed by a hand of pure tranquility. Then, her grandmother's eyes fluttered open. They were not clouded with confusion or shadowed by fear, but were clear, lucid, and deeply aware. Her gaze, gentle and knowing, settled on Alara's exhausted face. A true, rested smile touched her grandmother's lips, a sight Alara had feared she would never see again. Her hand, no longer frail and trembling, rose with a gentle strength, her palm coming to rest firmly against Alara's tear-streaked cheek. The touch was not the weak grasp of an invalid, but the sure, comforting hold of the woman Alara remembered. Her eyes, clear and deep, held not just relief, but a new, gentle wisdom, as if she had returned from a long journey of her own. A knot of fear tightened in Alara's stomach. She braced for the inevitable questions, the demand for a story she was not ready to share, a tale of gates and sacrifices that would sound like madness. How could she possibly explain the hollow space inside her, the traded memory that now felt like a missing tooth in her soul? But the questions never came. Her grandmother's gaze seemed to look right through her, seeing the cost etched into her very being. "You gave something precious for me," she whispered, her voice a soft rustle of leaves. "I felt it in my dream. Thank you, my child." Those simple words, that immediate and unasked for understanding, did more than any healing magic could. It was a balm poured directly onto the raw wound of Alara's sacrifice. The hollow ache did not vanish, but it was suddenly filled with a new meaning, a purpose that made the loss feel not like a theft, but like a worthy offering. In that shared, silent understanding, a bond deeper than any they had known before settled over them, a quiet peace built on a sacrifice seen and honored. The silence that settled between them was not empty, but deep and full. It was woven from the gentle crackle of the fire and the distant, rhythmic sigh of the sea, a shared understanding that needed no words. The frantic urgency that had driven Alara for so long had finally burned away, leaving in its place a profound and quiet connection. Her internal war shifted from a fear of failure to the slow, necessary process of accepting her loss. The hollow place inside her, where a golden memory had once lived, was a quiet, persistent ache, She was now the keeper of a great and secret truth, a story of a sunken city that the world above could never know, and the weight of that knowledge settled onto her young shoulders. Looking at her grandmother's peaceful, restored face, she made a quiet decision. She would not spend her days mourning the memory she had given. Instead, she would pour all her love into building new ones, joyful and present, moment by simple moment. This quiet resolution was her final step, from a desperate girl into a woman who understood the true balance of life, that giving and receiving are two currents in the same vast ocean. As night fell, wrapping the small hut in a soft, star-dusted blanket, the sound of quiet footsteps and murmured voices began to gather outside their door. The village had come, drawn by an unspoken need to hear a story. The door to the hut creaked open to reveal the village elders, their faces no longer etched with stern judgment, but with a quiet, humbled awe. They had not come to reprimand the girl who had defied them, but to ask a boon of the woman who had returned. The eldest among them spoke, his voice a soft gravel of respect. We heard the song, Alara. We felt its peace settle over our homes. Please, share the story of your journey, so it may become a new legend for our people, a harbor of calm for generations to come. In that moment, Alara felt the final weight of her transformation settle upon her. She was no longer a reckless youth, but a keeper of a profound truth. The conflict was immediate and internal. To tell the full, unvarnished story would be to share the hollow ache in her soul, the memory she had willingly given away. But the story's purpose was to bring peace, not to burden others with the sharp edges of her personal cost. She made her decision. Yes, she would tell the tale. But she would weave it with care, as one weaves a protective blanket, choosing which threads to display and which to hide within the seams. She agreed, and the villagers gathered around the central fire as dusk painted the sky. Alara began to speak, her voice now touched by the ancient magic of the deep. She did not speak of the cold emptiness where a golden memory once lived. Instead, she painted the city of Ethel in all its pearlescent glory. She described the gentle, dreaming citizens and the heart that pulsed with a light older than time. She centered the entire legend on the power of selfless love, the choice to put another's peace before one's own desire. Her telling was a masterpiece of calm, a tapestry of wonder for all to sleep upon. The villagers were utterly captivated, their breaths held, their own worries soothed by the myth made real. The story of Ethel was renewed, a living, breathing comfort for her people. Yet as they drifted to their homes, hearts lighter and minds at ease, Alara remained by the dying fire. The full, unspoken truth of her sacrifice settled deep within her, a solitary burden for the storyteller to carry so that her people could simply dream. The quiet aftermath of her great journey settled into a new rhythm for Alara. She found herself humming a new melody, one that wove the profound tranquility of Ethel with the familiar, comforting tones of her own village. It was not the city's original lullaby that was a power too immense to ever sing again, but rather its echo, filtered through her own heart and given a new, gentler form. She composed a simple song for the village children, its notes like a soft hand smoothing a blanket, its rhythm like the calm, steady breathing of the sea. When she sang it to the little ones at dusk, their sleep was not just peaceful, it was profound. Parents whispered of children who slept through the night without a single whimper, and who spoke in the morning of gentle, beautiful dreams of a city made of glowing pearl, where friendly, shimmering lights danced in silent streets. Alara listened to these reports with a mixture of joy and quiet vigilance. She had carefully crafted the melody to comfort, not to connect. It carried the feeling of Ethel's peace, but none of its waking magic, ensuring her gift would never become a key that could ever again disturb the city's new life. To seal this intention, she went to her grandmother first, teaching the lullaby to the woman whose healing had made it all possible. This act made her grandmother not just a recipient of the magic, but a partner in its gentle stewardship. The song quickly wove itself into the very fabric of the village, a new thread in their cultural tapestry. It became a living heirloom, a nightly reminder that great love could forge miracles from myth. Alara's legacy was secured not as the girl who challenged the ocean, but as the woman who brought back its deepest calm. The melody drifted from the windows each night, a soft promise over the sleeping village. On clear evenings, they would walk to the shore together. The sea air was cool and carried the scent of salt and damp sand, a familiar perfume that now held a new, deeper meaning. Alara and her grandmother would stand side by side, their silence a comfortable language, and look out at the vast expanse of water. It no longer felt like a barrier or a mystery, but a friendly, familiar presence, a neighbor whose quiet life was now intimately connected to their own. Sometimes, just as the last light of day bled from the sky, a soft, phosphorescent glow would appear on the distant horizon. It was not the harsh flash of lightning, but a gentle, breathing luminescence, a slow pulse of light that hinted at a thriving, awakened world beneath the waves. They never spoke of what it was, this silent signal from Ethel. They simply watched it, their shared understanding a quiet vigil. This evening walk became their sacred ritual, a time for gratitude and for honoring the invisible thread that now connected their small world to the great one below. It was a living reminder that her journey had not ended a story, but had spun a new one into being, a tale where the worlds of land and sea were now gently, peacefully intertwined. The sea whispered back, a constant, gentle companion. Alara became the village's quiet sentinel of the sea. Her bond with the ocean, forged in sacrifice, gave her a unique understanding of its subtle language. She could read the meaning in a sudden calm, interpret the warning in a change of the current, and sense the distant, thriving pulse of Ethel in the water's gentle hum. This was not a role she sought, but one that settled upon her naturally, and the village began to look to her for guidance. Their old fear of the vast, forgetting waters slowly melted away, replaced by a deep and abiding reverence. Parents no longer told frightening tales of sea monsters to their children, but instead shared Alara's gentle stories of a city of light, teaching them to listen for the ocean's own quiet songs. This transformation was her greatest joy, yet it also brought her greatest tension. Some of the younger villagers, their hearts fired by the new legends, would look out at the horizon with a dangerous curiosity, their eyes gleaming with the desire for their own adventure. Alara had to gently, but firmly, guide them back. She would take them to the shore and point not to the horizon, but to the intricate life in the tidal pools, showing them that wonder did not require a journey to the abyss, but could be found in respecting the mystery from a safe distance. She knew the peril of the path she had walked, and she was determined to prevent anyone else from paying such a personal price. This responsibility led to a solemn decision. One evening, by the light of a single candle, she took out a blank journal and began to write. She recorded the full, unvarnished truth, the crushing pressure of the trench, the exact melody of the lullaby, and the hollow ache of the memory she had given away. This was not a story for the village, not now, and perhaps not ever. It was a record for a future keeper, someone who might one day need to understand the delicate balance she had forged, a testament sealed with the weight of truth to protect the peace between the waking city below and the world above. And so, the tale was safeguarded, waiting for its time. The boundary between her world and the one below grew thin one night as Alara slept. She did not dream of the golden morning she had lost, but found herself walking on a path of smooth, glowing coral. The city of Ethel was awake, but transformed. Its people were no longer stone, but beings of fluid light and gentle current, their forms shimmering as they moved through the vibrant streets. They did not speak, but as she passed, each one turned and offered a slow, deliberate nod, a gesture of profound gratitude and deep, abiding friendship that resonated in the very air. The dream felt more real than the waking world, the colors brighter, the sense of presence absolute. As she stood in the central plaza, the great crystal heart pulsed with a warm, familiar light. It did not return the specific memory of her first song, the images and words she had willingly given. Instead, it offered something else, a single, radiant feeling. It was the pure, untainted joy of that long ago morning, the emotion itself distilled from the event that had once contained it. The warmth of connection, the spark of delighted learning, the safety of her grandmother's love, all of it flooded back into her, a golden tide without a single defining picture. The line between a simple dream and a true communication from the city became beautifully, terrifyingly blurred. Was this her own mind comforting her, or was Ethel, in its new life, reaching back across the depths to honor its keeper? She chose not to question the miracle. Standing before the heart in her dream, she opened her spirit and accepted the gift, understanding that a sacrifice made from love can sometimes be answered with a different kind of wholeness. She awoke with the dawn light on her face, and the hollow ache that had lived inside her for so long was gone. In its place was a quiet, constant joy, a warmth unbound from any single moment, a part of her now forever. With a light heart, she greeted the new day. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows that seemed to listen as Alara, her hair now as silver as the bark of her long-vanished boat, settled into her chair by the hearth. The faces of her grandchildren, young and bright in the firelight, turned to her with the age-old question in their eyes. "Tell us a story, grandmother." And so she began, her voice a gentle current that carried the faint, resonant hum of the deep. She told them of a city beneath the waves, not as a place of peril, but as a realm of serene, dreaming beauty. She spoke of a great and selfless love that journeyed through whispering seas and silent forests to find a song of pure peace. Her telling was a masterwork of calm, each word chosen not for thrilling adventure, but for soothing the soul toward sleep. She did not speak of the hollow ache of a memory given away, or the crushing weight of a world-altering choice. Those truths remained a quiet, settled knowledge in her own heart, a personal covenant with the past. The story she gifted to the children was a polished stone from that long journey, smooth and comforting to hold, its sharper edges worn away by time and purpose. The stakes for her now were not measured in life or death, but in the gentle breathing of the children before her. Her greatest hope was that the legend would weave itself into the fabric of their dreams, teaching them that courage is often quiet, and that the greatest love thinks of others first. As the tale wound to its tranquil close, the children's eyelids grew heavy, their small bodies relaxing into the soft chairs. The story had done its work, becoming a vessel for safety and rest. And outside the cottage window, under a canopy of stars, the distant sea seemed to sigh, a soft, rhythmic sound of contentment that perfectly matched the peaceful silence now filling the room. The true climax of Alara's journey arrived not with a storm or a song, but in a silence that spoke volumes. After the final note of the lullaby faded, after the shimmering lights had soaked into her grandmother's skin, the moment of truth hung in the quiet hut. It was not a test of magic, but of the human heart. Alara, emptied and raw from her sacrifice, could only wait, her own spirit feeling as thin and fragile as parchment. She had given up a piece of her own past, a golden memory that had once defined her, and the hollow space it left behind was a cold, lonely ache, the outcome of her entire quest. The validation of every impossible choice rested on the next few breaths. Then her grandmother's eyes opened. They were clear, deeply aware, and they settled on Alara with an understanding that needed no words. There was no confusion, no demand for an explanation of the miracle. Her grandmother's gaze simply saw the cost etched into Alara's very being, the quiet sorrow where a joyful moment had been willingly surrendered. Her hand, now strong and steady, rose to Alara's cheek. "You gave something precious for me," she whispered. "I felt it in my dream, in that single, silent exchange of looks, and that soft-spoken acknowledgement. The story reached its highest emotional peak. The immense personal cost was not just redeemed, it was instantly honored. The magic of the lullaby had healed the body, but this profound, intuitive recognition healed the giver. It affirmed that the greatest power was not in the mythical song from a sunken city, but in a love so deep it could be understood without a single story being told, a bond where sacrifice is seen and validated in a quiet glance. This was the lesson the journey had taught Alara, and the wisdom her grandmother had always possessed. The real victory was this silent communion, a testament that the most powerful transformations often happen not in grand battles, but in the quiet spaces between hearts. Alara lived out her days as the village guardian, her long life a quiet testament to the balance she had forged between the world above and the one below. The specific memory of that golden morning, the song her grandmother taught her, never returned in its original form. Its images and sounds were a story she knew but could no longer feel. Yet the profound joy from that moment, its essential warmth and safety, was given back to her as a permanent gift, a gentle light that never faded from her spirit. She carried this quiet joy with her always, a soft hum beneath her daily tasks, a constant reminder that some losses are transformed, not merely endured. Far out at sea, the city of Ethel thrived in its vibrant new life, and on clear, calm nights, its faint, pulsing glow on the horizon was a silent, gentle promise to those who knew to look for it, a reassurance that magic and profound peace endure. The story she so carefully told was no longer just her own. It became a tool for calm, a whispered legend for restless children and weary adults alike, a myth that healed not one soul, but countless generations. It proved time and again that the most meaningful quests are always born from love, and their real, lasting treasure is not a thing you hold, but the deep and abiding peace they leave behind for others to find.